we are bringing back one of our most favorite topics, Web3 music, very briefly. We're also making the
Yep.
most of AI while it's a hot topic, telling you how you can build your own startup with AI, as well as looking at the founders of one of the most potential successful social apps of the last 10 years. Yeah, so Nathan obviously has his segment, but we keep it a surprise here on HQLA.
That's true. That's true. If anyone didn't know, we try and do our best to not tell each other what we're going to talk about, so that the reactions are as authentic as they can possibly be.
So I'll kick off with that. Spotify is actually testing out token-enabled music playlists, which is really interesting. So basically, you'll be able to connect a Web3 wallet like your MetaMask into Spotify, and you will get to listen to a curated playlist, which is created by token holders of 4 different communities. So there's 4 communities that are trying this out at the moment. So they're all NFT based communities. So they're called Fluff, Moonbirds,
Yep.
Kingship, and Overlord. And so I went and had a look at a few of these projects on OpenSea. They're pretty big. There's a few there that are potentially a little bit familiar, especially for our cross-platform listeners that are listening to Another Block Studios as well.
Wasn't the artist on, the people who had that whole
Angel Baby.
fake Web3 artist, Angel Baby? She's a flop.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, I thought it was that because I went and had a look and I was like, oh, this is very similar. Yeah.
So wait, so you're saying that for me to listen to the playlist, I need to buy one of their NFTs? Is that what you're saying?
I believe so. So you need to own one of the NFTs, and you can connect your MetaMask wallet or another Web3 wallet.
Yeah,
that's right. And then it lets you participate in that community's playlist. So that's pretty crazy if you think about how NFTs are basically nowhere near where they were in terms of like the popularity and all that stuff. They've still got those pretty high floor prices.
So are you sure if this is a test case, like if this was the end product, I'd say I don't really understand the point of it. But if this is a test case for artists being able to do that and then being able to like pre-release songs and stuff like that, that's wild. That's very, very good. That's super smart.
I mean, any integration that Spotify is kind of doing in that area is really cool because it'll it'll definitely be something where they'll sort of more and more integrate. A lot of those startups and projects that are working in the Web3 music space are actually pretty, like, some of them have pretty poor business savvy and everything. So some of them will be taken over by Spotify. Like they'll be trying to do merch as, like say a Web3 startup that's specifically focused on merch for an artist. Spotify will easily pick that up and just turn it into their own feature. Or just buy a competitor and integrate.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, on our, as you were mentioning, our cross-platform listeners would be aware of another project that we're part of called Another Block Studios, and so we've interviewed a number of different project leads or CEOs or founders on that particular project. And wouldn't it be interesting if some of those got rolled up into some sort of acquisition by Spotify? As you say, we've talked to different people who are doing different things in that world. And you're right, like imagine if Spotify just went and bought a lot of the Web3 startups in all different facets. So yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, that's cool. That was a good bit of news. Well done.
Yeah, that one's cool. So obviously a bit of the AI stuff. So since we last talked about it, and this is a funny one, since we last talked about it, Google launched Bard. I think that they launched it the day after we recorded our last one. So it's already old news, but it's a
I've
terrible.
Actually never heard of it. I don't know what it is.
Oh, there you go. So what happened was they actually launched Bard. They went to test it.
Is this a direct competitor for ChatGPT?
Yeah, so it's their AI tool as a direct competitor for ChatGPT. So apparently they've been working on this for years, and Google's never really been able to make it work properly. I think it's too competitive to their actual product as well. So I feel like it's something they would have poured hundreds of millions into.
And it's probably something they didn't ever really want to release unless their hand were forced.
Exactly.
In such a situation as this. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So essentially it's called Bard, so it's essentially a misspelled Brad. And it's when they tested it out, the day that they did the launch day and the presentation and everything, they actually tried it and it just wouldn't work, which actually caused
Oh,
Google to
I
lose
have heard about this.
huge market cap. Yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
Didn't a bunch of people get fired who were working on the project?
I'm not sure. Yeah. That's
That's
heaps
what
funny
I
if they did.
Sorry, that's very anecdotal, but I feel like
Yeah.
maybe that's something that I heard. But I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
that's heaps funny. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people have been getting fired from Google, so it's a perfect excuse to
Well, that was the thing.
to get
Like
rid
it
of.
was like, yeah, that's right. Like it was like, was it just like convenient timing that all of the developers leading that project took a voluntary redundancy after that
Yeah.
presentation? I don't know. I don't even know that's what happened, but
Yeah.
do your own
It's
research.
also funny because now instead of them learning from their mistakes, someone else has to try not to get fired and not make the same mistake. Yeah, so I think we covered it off last time as well, but GPT-4 is integrated into Bing, which is interesting. So GPT-4 being the next one up, which is cool. And one of our boldest billionaires, Jeff Bezos, is trying to buy the Washington Commanders, which is interesting. So
And that was bold, not bold.
yeah, boldest. Yeah. Yeah. So that used to be
yes.
that team used to be called the Redskins, and so it's a football team, obviously. And he's actually hired an investment firm to help with the bid. So it's a really interesting play for his retirement. He's really, one thing I was thinking about is he's really consolidating his power since he bought the Washington Post. He's buying a football team. It's kind of like he's getting, and he's got his space company. Obviously, he's kind of getting maybe a few powerful people to some games and making a run for the president in the future. Who knows? So that could be pretty
Oh,
interesting.
okay. That's a good prediction. Is
Yeah.
that what year are you predicting that?
I'm going to say what year is it this year? 2023. It's too soon. I'm going to say 2028 is
Yeah, you're right.
big run.
It is too soon.
Yeah, he's got a few more years of retirement, I reckon. And yeah, that could be really interesting. I think he's already very powerful. He's already got a house in Washington DC, so I reckon that's part of the move.
All right, I like it. Okay, good, great, fantastic news.
So in this one, it's more targeted at the entrepreneurs that want to take projects to that next level, and there's a little challenge at the end for how they can all kind of link together. So we'll keep that one as a little bit of something exciting to stick around for. So the first,
okay, good. I like a challenge, and then next week we can come back and see how people went. I like it.
Well, I'll explain a little more as we get to it. It's more of a challenge of me telling you about it. So the first tool that I'm going to start with, this is really cool. So this is called, I've been doing a little research into a few of the AI tools that people can kind of use to start a business. So this one's called Landbot.io. So it's not actually specifically an AI native tool originally, but it's a no-code chatbot builder. So what that means is you can use it without knowing how to code and put in responses to common customer queries and create kind of a flowchart of all the different conversations that you would have, that your customers would have with your employees, basically, when they're on that customer service level.
Gotcha. So this customer potentially asks question with these keywords in it. This is the suggested response. Blah blah blah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone's been on the receiving end of one of those at one point, and they've often asked, I mean, for me, I said if you're real, and sometimes they do. So I don't know if that's a bot or if that's a.
You're gonna have to bleep that
out. Yeah, bleep out. No, it's just.
You got to bleep that out again. We're gonna pay for every bleep,
So I'm sure everyone's received one before. I know we've used one for Facebook Messenger. But this
that's
really
right.
Cool.
Yeah, Facebook have had that for a while. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this one's really cool because it can integrate with heaps of different services. So you can integrate it with WordPress, Shopify, Webflow, WhatsApp, Stripe for processing payments, Calendly for booking meetings. So this one's
sick.
Yeah. So this one's crazy how practical it is, because most of these things, I think they only are built for one platform and then they just stick to that one platform only. So this is really cool. Something cool about it is, yeah, for sure. It can now, so just newly, it can integrate into ChatGPT, which is going to take it to another level of generative human-like interactions from your company to your customers. So
or almost the
yeah,
like as in ChatGPT can be integrated with it, and so people can ask questions, and it can actually get like, what do you mean? I don't understand.
the integration works like this, right? So basically, it finds the answers to the customer's questions on your website. So it'll find return days, for example. Say you've used Landbot to fill out
Oh,
a
that's
bunch of
good.
different customer questions, but you haven't filled out how many return days do I have. You just forgot that, right? And so a customer asks how many return days. It'll go and search for the return days policy, and it'll come back and it'll say 30 days to
Gotcha. Oh,
return your
that's
product,
great.
and
That's really
it'll
good.
frame it as though it's an employee and everything. It'll
Yep.
properly
Yep.
work that
Yep.
out. So yeah, it'll kind of say how many days they have to return an item based
Wow,
on
that's
what
awesome.
your website says. So and it'll find
Okay.
other things like that as well. All right, so that's tool number one. Tool number two is Synthesia IO, right? So this is an AI video generating platform. And let me just share my screen to show what this is like. Okay, so here we go.
Let's do it.
Hi there, Nathan. It's me, your new AI co-host of H2LA. If you're listening to the audio-only Verison, you should know that there's also a video of me saying this. Subscribe to the YouTube for more.
Okay,
I have
so
a confession. I actually
yeah.
I've used this website before.
There you go. Okay, all right. Well, you can't be
But I like it. I
blown
like
away.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
You
blown
can't
away.
be.
No, I'm blown away, as I was the first time I saw it. Well, I don't know if I was that blown away, but it was good. It's good. I mean, yeah, it was fine.
It's pretty cool. So it's pretty cool because it's like a completely new person, right? So for everyone who didn't know what was going on there, or you're listening to the audio only, there's basically a completely fake woman that is completely AI generated, not a real person at all. She had which it was complete with a video of her saying what we had scripted into it, and basically you can kind of script anything, and the AI will speak as though they are a representative of your company, which is really cool. And so the uses are
So this is a
really
combination
crazy.
of this is sort of like a combination of like that. What was the photo AI generation platform that we were talking about last week? It's a kind of a
Like
combination
Lensa.
of the visual element of that. Yeah, visual element of that, and then text to speech. And then, so I guess in my head, I already was aware of those things. So when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, this is like a natural outcome of that. But I guess it's pretty
Exactly.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's crazy that they've kind of put it all together. And if I can go further on that, there was a David Guetta DJ set where he actually used a piece of Eminem's. So like he generated using text, like he basically put in what would Eminem say about the Future Sound Festival, right? And then Eminem, he like generated this text by Eminem, then he put it into an Eminem voice sounder like AI tool, and got that and put it into his DJ set, and used Eminem's voice in his
As like an endorsement.
actual set. Yeah, but it
Yeah,
wasn't.
right.
But he had just gone and done that online, so it wasn't like he had asked Eminem or anything. He had just gone, found that, made it sound like Eminem, put it into his DJ set. So pretty crazy that you can kind of do things like that. You can just copy someone else now and like put it into your own DJ. The future is here, you know. So obviously there's a lot of implications there for you know, intellectual property and everything like that. But yeah, anyway, this is not that. This is Synthesia. So the next thing I'm talking about is a protocol. So this is called RATH. It's RATH, and it's actually really niche to try and find out information about it, right? But it's a protocol by a company called Kanaries, and it's not like a product that you kind of sign up to, but it's something that you more API into. So it's basically something where you're taking the product from GitHub and kind of connecting it with your SQL database or your AWS database, and it's basically a Tableau competitor. So it's different from Tableau though. So Tableau is kind of like a data analysis tool that's kind of very commonly used to take data from all different systems, and basically it's like a custom business to business huge big data system that kind of analyzes data for you and helps you make sense of it. So this is really cool because it can take huge data sets and turn it into insights using AI instead. So Tableau doesn't really use AI. It just kind of shows you raw data and lets you choose what you want to do with the data yourself. Whereas this, it's definitely got all of the classic, data kind of stuff, like taking a series of dashboards and creating the insights. But it can actually help you to create those insights. It can help you to clean data. It can help you to filter data automatically without having to, I think a lot of people have gone through individual rows in Excel because they couldn't figure out how to change something to a date or something like that. So this is kind of an AI which will help you to do all of that data cleaning stuff, remove the noise, and give you something really valuable to work with. So that's that one. My fourth one is called Looka. So this one's really cool. It's basically a something which will help you create a professional design for your business. So it's like a logo maker.
How do you spell that?
It's Looka. Yeah. So this one's really cool. So it'll help you basically. It'll provide a full design template for your brand. It'll generate business cards. It'll create a vertical and horizontal design concept and kind of show that on a website. So it's essentially replacing the full service graphic designer for a subscription fee, which is crazy because that's like a whole industry that's gone by this one startup, which is really really interesting.
So you just put in a few attributes of your business, what you're interested in, what you're trying to do, blah blah blah. Maybe choose a few colors or something, and then it just spits out all of your digital needs and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the coolest ones. This is the fifth idea. This is an app which lets you describe your app using text. So you type in prompts, and it'll design it for you. And you can essentially type in that you want to build Uber for hairdressers or Airbnb for dogs, and then you describe what you want the onboarding screen to look like, the next screen, all that kind of stuff. You type in these prompts, and it'll create the full design there in the style that you prompt it, which is really cool. So it's called Gallileo. It's really cool. It's definitely next level in terms of design, because a lot of people can. I haven't tried it, but it's like a waitlist kind of an app. But I'm keen to give it a go. I'm on the wait list, so I'll let you know how that goes when we get back to it. So where it gets better than that, though, is you can take those designs and they can actually be edited in Figma. So you can export a file to Figma and then make your own adjustments, which is really sick.
As in just drag stuff around basically and then put it back in.
Yeah. So like Figma being like the design leader of this kind of area, it's really cool because you can obviously export to Figma and
presumably
make those.
You could make it all in Figma, drop it into this Galileo app, and then just tell it what you want it to do with your design. Like say, this button goes to here, this button goes to here, that does that. Like in your head, is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't used it, so I'm not sure about the importing and exporting, but I know it can export the file. So
interesting.
I don't want to speak for them, but that would be a good idea. They should do that.
Yes.
Or
I feel like there's a lot of companies called Galileo. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there are. So it was actually quite funny because I was looking up, and it's like the 5th or 10th one down. So it's actually it's called usegalileo.ai. So that's how specific they had to get with the yeah.
They couldn't even get usegalileo.com.
Exactly. Yeah. For sure. So in taking all of that, that's not even the important part. This is the challenge at the end. So how would you, all of that's all well and good and everything, but how would you take all of that, combine it into a business that actually works? That's the most important part. So if you're building a tech stack, it's cool to be like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, but what are you really building with it? It's otherwise, if you're just playing around with it, it's like, oh, this is a bit of fun. This is pretty cool. You'll play around with it for 1 or 2 days, and then you'll get bored and you'll leave it, and then it'll just be something you knew about, So how can you kind of combine all of that into a business that works? So here's what I would do. I would start with taking we're getting into.
Do you want to hear what I would do?
Okay, all right, you go first. You go first.
Do you want to hear what I would do?
Yeah,
I would do a cameo, but with video, but using AI with fake looking, you have Tom Cruise, but it's not quite Tom Cruise. and then it'll build your website for you because I don't want to have to build a website, so I'll use Gallileo to build the website. I'll have a little chat GPT AI bot for all the questions that people have, and then I'll just do like fake videos of people.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I'm not sure if Synthesia lets you pick. I mean, I haven't actually used it other than for that demo video, so I'm not sure if you can actually customize what the person looks like. But an idea where you could customize what the person looks like and specifically make it look like a celebrity, that would be a great idea, because then you could do that cameo idea, right? But it doesn't use all 5 of the systems there. So here's what I would start. Here's something that I just thought of as a separate idea. That idea might be better than this idea, but we'll see. We'll let our listeners give us a 5-star review. Yeah, they'll give us a 5-star review.
And put your answer in the comment. That's exactly right.
Yeah, even if you don't like us, give us a 5-star review and do a negative review, and we'll read it out on the podcast. Yeah. So there you go. If you really hate this show and you've made it this far, I'm actually surprised. But,
yeah. I'm constantly surprised that anyone makes it this far.
Yeah, I mean, even if you like it, yeah. I know we have a lot of fans, Nathan. Yeah, so something that I would do, I would take a data system, right, and I would use that to create the core product, which would be creating an insights business. So the insights business would be something you can sell as a B2B SaaS, so a business-to-business software as a service company, and it could be a bit of a consumer data business, right? So one thing I would look at as an area is, say, there's a bit of slippage in showing in the data in a certain industry, right? So I would go, okay, there are customers that are coming into your retail store, and they buy something and they never get contacted again because you don't have a very good system of keeping track of them. You don't have a system like a CRM which tells you when to call them or tells you when they've been emailed and all that kind of thing. They never get contacted again, and they don't remember that you're there, so there's no relationship with the brand, right? So there's a solution here, I think. So you could build a data system that ranks the customers that come into your store. The ones that come in often, you could tell them they're kind of part of a VIP club. You could offer them exclusive products. You could offer them early info on drops. You can offer them blogs and extra information, which your standard customers wouldn't get. And then the ones that come in once and they sign up and they only buy one time, you could offer them discounts. You could contact them by text and email to kind of build a personalized message for each customer to say like, oh, you bought this previously. We're actually doing here's a discount for if you want another one or whatever. And then that way that they can be like, oh, this brand actually cares about me. And there's kind of a CRM kind of follow-up system. And so let's say you build that system in RATH, which is one of those AI tools. Then you want to build the look of an app using Gallileo. So this is a business-to-business app that kind of your retail store owner can look at and say, okay, these are the insights. So you could design all the dashboards and the way that the business owners want to look at the app and look at the data, which is coming from that RATH insight system. You could do that, and then you could build the look of the brand using Looka, which would be able to show all your branding and your graphics and everything like that. And then next, you could have a Landbot chat bot to talk to your customers and on your website and book in a meeting or book in an appointment for the retail store or collect the payment using Stripe, all of that, those kind of things. And then once your customer signs up, you could use once your actual customer signs up to your B2B company, you could use Synthesia to send out a custom sales video that says like, "Oh, thanks for signing up to my service. Thanks, these are the next steps in onboarding."
It would be a little bit funny. It would be definitely very unique to get like a custom video which had like your name and everything in it and like a few things about you and thanking you for signing up and stuff. That would be pretty unique.
Yeah, I think it would make it more of a special experience, and I think it could be cool. And you could also make it like a sales video, and then be like, when you're cold reaching out to people, you could be like, "Oh, this this is a sales idea. Like this is what we're doing. This will help you because we've got insights. You know, and then what you can do, let's say you have something you can plug and play with a system, like for example, you work out how to connect to a few different backends. You know, people have a Square system to sign up, or Salesforce, or an SQL database, or whatever. Then once you can plug into a few of those, you'll have a few automated systems already that can kind of automatically go in and get people's data and draw the insights sort of more automated. And then once it's doing that, you can just focus on getting all new sales and whatever to your SaaS company. And so basically it would be like a synthesis of kind of all these five. You could build it like that, and you could have it all like packaged up into a business, and then you could plug and play with all different kinds of businesses. So you could, you could look at different retail. You could like, it doesn't have to just be retail. It could be like a pizza shop, or it could be kind of different things. And then it could just be like basically an automated system that kind of gets insights on each customer and shows the repeat purchase behavior and all that kind of stuff, and helps the business owner to understand their business a bit more. So that's kind of what I would build with all those five. Yeah.
It's good. It pretty effectively uses them all.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think drawing them all together, like talking about them is all well and good, but like bringing them all together is almost a unique skill in itself. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what you have to do if you. So that's what I would do in 2023 if I was needed to start a business and wanted to use AI tools as my tech stack.
All right, I like it. Well done. Okay, so I was thinking about what's interesting, what's a little different. And so right now, I guess the stock market is less interesting to a lot of people because it's tracking sideways or down. And so people are potentially looking at other asset classes. People are a bit unsure about property, particularly in our area, with changes in interest rates. And, Isaac and I were talking recently about, fixed mortgages becoming variable soon. And so not knowing how the market's going to be impacted by that, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that people invest in. And the tricky thing about it is a lot of these assets are high priced. The best thing about stocks is that they're, generally speaking, unless it's like Berkshire Hathaway or something, the stock prices, and I mean, you can buy, incremental pieces of stock anyway. Like you don't have to buy a single unit. And so that's kind of the best thing about the stock market, is really the entry point for anybody is really accessible. Crypto is similar in that regard, and so that's kind of cool. But then when you start talking about other things that wealthy people are often investing in, which is stuff like cars, watches, jewelry, etc., a lot of those things, the cost required up front is more than the average person can have. So so it has to offer. And so one of those interesting asset classes, I think, is handbags.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Rolexes.
That's too easy. So this company that we're going to chat about today, we're going to chat about the big players in the luxury handbags / kind of fashion industry. And there really are only about 4 players, conglomerates in that industry that own basically everything.
Can I guess that you're going to talk about LVMH?
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about that. That was also too easy.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about one, and I'll tell you towards the end, I'll kind of like explain why it is this one that I think is most interesting. But the company is called Hermès, right? And so, have you heard of it?
Is that how you pronounce it, Nathan?
You say it Hermès, or how it's a French company, so you've got to say it, Hermès, but I'm not going to say that.
But without the H.
Hermès. Oh yeah, okay, maybe yeah, okay. And so,
wow. Hope we have a lot of French.
There's going to be a lot more of this in this next segment.
I'm looking forward to
it. I've spelt some of it out phonetically, but some of it I'm just going to have a crack. So basically,
no worries.
Hermès, that's probably the best way of saying it, is they do have 4 subsidiaries, but probably one of the main differences with them is that it's not necessarily a large conglomerate. Something like what you mentioned there, LVMH or whatever it is, and there's even a couple of other ones which I'll talk to you towards the end. They're very much just rolling up brands, merging companies together to kind of create these huge luxury fashion houses, owned oftentimes majority by founding families, which is pretty interesting. And so This particular company, it is majority privately owned. The class of shares that the family own allows them to have significantly more voting rights than the public shares, and it is publicly listed on the French exchange, or the exchange in Paris, and so you can buy it, and so that's why I wanted to talk about it. If it was public, it might have been totally useless. But so we'll talk about this company, and then talk about the handbags as we get towards the end. So the company have 4 subsidiaries. One of them is like a fashion fragrance brand called Jean Paul. Another one is John Lobb, which is a really easy one to say. And so they actually, they're basically a shoe brand, which is really interesting. They were founded by Hermès in 1976, and they do like belts, for example, for $500, shoes for $1,000 to $2,000, women's shoes about the same price as well. Another one which is interesting is they do silverware and cutlery, which is under a company called Pure Fourcat, and that was founded in 1820. And,
very confident on that one. That was good.
I just said it quick enough that you couldn't pick it up. And it integrated in 1993 into the company. And finally, the last one is St. Louis. And so that's a crystal works company. It's really awesome. They make like such nice like tumblers and stoneware and stuff like that. And that's like $150 to $400 per piece. And that was founded in 1586, which is pretty crazy, but quite recently integrated, I think in 1996, into the Hermès brand. So other than that, they have their world a little bit in those other ancillary areas of fashion and lifestyle, but very much focused on their core business. And so their core business is very much what they would call ready to wear and luxury goods.
This is really cool because it's one of those companies where they're building a legacy brand. So they're building something that's going to be like 1,000 years. They're not building something that's like 10 years and then really big and then nothing, so it's really long-term thinking.
It's exactly right. And so in the 90s, you'll notice in the 90s that they rolled up the crystalware company and they took in the silverware company. So I think the concept there is that, as you said, it's a brand that people are starting to identify with or do identify with. They've always got handbags for their wife there. They've always bought your shoes there, whatever it is. And so now, Hermès has realized that. And so they're allowing people to kind of integrate it into the rest of their life, whether it be on the table, et cetera, fragrances, stuff like that. Hermès was started by Thierry Hermès, and he was born in Germany. And so he was born in 1801, which is a long time ago. It's pretty crazy. His mum was German and our father was French. And it was in and around the time of like the Napoleonic War, which is like, in my head, just crazy. Because in my head, that's like another world. But yet we still have branded items that had the same brand in that era, if that makes sense. And I think that's
pretty crazy to think about.
That's really weird, in my head, that like some person knew this brand and I also know the brand. Obviously, their perception of it would have been different back then, as we'll talk about. But just that being a link between those generations is just really strange. Kind of actually talking about just such long lasting. So the family moved to Paris in 1828. So that is 27 years after he was born. And so basically he founded the company when he was 36. So some, 10 years or so, 9 years after that period of moving back to Paris. And the interesting thing is, at that point in time, all he was making was harnesses and bridles for like French noblemen. But from the very beginning, he was known for extreme quality over sort of price. So it doesn't really matter how much it's going to cost. This is how I'm going to do it, and this is the best possible way, best possible materials, sourcing the materials themselves, etc.
So does that explain the logo? Because I'm pretty sure this is completely from memory, but is the logo a horse and carriage?
Yeah, it definitely is. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that logo didn't exist back at this point because a horse and carriage was just so common that you wouldn't bother putting it on a logo, if that kind of makes sense. Sure. But later on, I'll mention that, one of the later owners of the company, or one of the later family members, I suppose, does create and trademark that logo. And that's what you've got in mind there. That's exactly right. And so, and chances are that they potentially still make a little bit of that stuff to this day, but I'm sure it's not very much of a contributor towards their revenue stream. So Thierry Hermès, as I said, founded in 1883 at the age of 36, which is kind of older. I guess that's interesting because, when you're 36, I mean, 36 is a good age. If anyone's 36, all power to you. But me, I'm, 25, 26, and I'm sort of thinking like, oh, that's a real age. Like, this is an age where things, I don't know, things should be done by this age. But then,
I was
this
thinking
guy,
about that actually as you said
yeah,
it. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, because like it's like, oh, it's this age where you should be a lot more confident in what you can do. But then if you're only just starting something, it's really funny. But the next segment I'll talk about a startup which is started by a 39-year-old. So there you
oh,
go.
there you go. This is great. Empowering
Well,
the mature age.
basically prehistoric age at this point, it's,
Any listeners that we did have now all left. Okay, so it's interesting. So then his son, Charles Emile Hermès, they moved the store basically sort of towards the center of Paris, or Paris, sorry. And so that's the store that's still there right now. And that's pretty significant, because that was still
That's so
pre the 1900s, so 1880. And it became their first retail store, again, just selling bridles and harnesses and saddles and stuff like that for horses and stuff. But again, very much just to the elite, starting to catering towards Europe, Russia, North America, Asia, and the Americas, etc. Now, the first that we saw of what could be a handbag was what was actually a bag for the saddles and the harness to carry it around, if that makes sense. So, for example, you might bring your own saddles and harness, but you might be riding someone else's horse, or you might have multiple horses. And so instead of having to carry the pieces as you would have had to up until this point, they decided they already had their ability to create beautiful leather objects. They decided to make what would kind of look like to us a very large handbag for, I guess in that era, probably men, to put all of their saddleware and stuff like that in, which is kind of interesting. And so that was in the 1880s, which is kind of interesting. And so Charles Emile is very much known for moving the store and creating what's kind of the first instance of a handbag. His son, who's Emile, takes part of his dad's name. Him and his brother, they take over the company, and that's in the very start of the 1900s, so 1902. So about 100 years since Terry was born. I think he was born in 01, I think I said, of 1800s. And so they changed their name because they're brothers. They're taking it over. They changed the name from Hermès to Hermès Brothers. And so it's Hermès Frères. I think it was how you would say it in French back then. Okay. And
Great
so
rhyme.
Hermès Frères. Yeah. And so, okay, interesting thing. So Emile, right, who is the grandson of the original founder of the company at this point, he goes over to Canada, visits Canada. And I thought this was a bit far-fetched, but I looked a little bit on the website as well as secondary sources, and it was all pretty verified. So Emile goes over to Canada and he sees a zipper for the first time, right? In about 1910. Okay, so he's been running the company for about 9-10 years. And he sees a zipper on the front of a military vehicle, or might have been on the back of it or somewhere, to used to kind of like, the canvas material on a lot of the military vehicles, used to kind of close it all in for the weather in Canada because it's notoriously cold. And notice that would be like a great fastener for their handbags to keep everything from falling out. Or at that point, it would have been their saddlebags. And so he introduced the patent into France. So Hermès is known for first patenting the zipper in France, and designed the first bags and clothing with zippers in that time. And it actually became known as the Hermès zipper, which is kind of interesting. And so another interesting notable point was, or I guess turning point for them, was the ascent of motor vehicles, right? So then in the early 1900s, people are starting to use horses less and less, right? And their whole business is predicated on these rich, important people wanting to use horses and then needing their saddles. And that was no longer becoming the case. So in 1922, the first ever actual handbag was produced. And it was just essentially a smaller version of that original saddlebag. And allegedly, Emile, who's the grandson of Teddy, his wife was requesting some sort of bag for her to put her implements in. And so that was the origination, 1922, of the very first handbag by Hermès. And it was just, as I said, a smaller version of that original saddlebag for all the saddle accessories that were required back in the day. So then 3 years later, they made their first ever ready-to-wear product, which was a golf jacket and a golf bag. And again, this was all made out of leather. That was sort of all they knew at that point. And so that was kind of interesting. Other than handbags, Hermès is known for silk scarves, which in my head is very random. But I think the connection is because they don't necessarily do everything. They're very much known for their handbags, and there's a couple of specific handbags that I'll mention in a minute, and you might have even heard of them. They're that kind of famous. And I think the combination of the two, I think silk and leather are like both probably in that day, as far as like fashion, probably the two best materials you could possibly use, is my assumption. And so silk scarves and then leather handbags, I think they're probably the two most popular products they could possibly come up with. And so in 1937, somewhat 12 years later, they came out with the silk scarf. And so that was where you will have seen back in the day a lot of the ladies with like it tied around their head and like a bow kind of underneath like this. So that was the silk scarves. A lot of them were Hermès. So kind of interesting. Now, around the same time, they made what's one of two of their very first very, very, very popular handbags. And so this one is called the Kelly bag. And I'll talk a bit about it in the 50s in a second here, because when it first came out, it really didn't have a lot of notoriety. And so it wasn't until a particular photo was taken was this bag actually, I guess, part of what is now basically pop culture. So the only other product that's worth noting is a tie. And so they in about 1950, they came out with a tie. The story goes that one of their one of their retail workshops was located near a casino, and they were constantly getting men who would come in and ask if they had any tie options to try and get into the casino. And so they just recognized the market there, and they started making ties, and as they still do to this day. Emil, who was the grandson, he had a number of children. They were all girls. And so the next person to take on the brand was a guy named Robert Dumas. And so he is the son-in-law of Emil, which is interesting. So he's the first blood family member to take over the company. And so a little bit of pressure on him. And so interestingly enough, the Kelly bag comes into play here. So in 1956, there was a picture in a magazine called Life magazine, and it's of Princess Grace Kelly of Monaco, right? And she's holding this Hermès bag, the one that they made in the 30s, and she's holding it in front of a pregnant belly. And so people saw the photo in the magazine. It went viral, went all around the world, and so they named it the Kelly bag. And so they literally, I don't know what they originally called the bag back in the day, because they designed it 20 years earlier, but they totally renamed the actual bag itself to the Kelly bag, and it totally transformed the perception of the brand from, at this point, being just the elite to now people who could possibly maybe get their hands on a product themselves.
That's a pretty cool piece of cultural history there then, like a brand being tied in with something a bit historical.
Correct, exactly right. And so there was an issue in about the 60s or 70s where there was a push for synthetic materials. So this is probably the technology had boomed in this area. And so a lot of brands were noticing the efficiencies found and probably some of the benefits in wearing some of these synthetic cottons and stuff like that. But harking back to the original thesis of the company, the runner at the time, the person who was running the company at the time, which is Robert Dumas, he was set on continuing to use the natural materials. And so they actually saw, again, as with the time with the automobiles, they saw like a pretty significant reduction in sales. But they sort of stuck at their intentions. And this is interesting because what it meant was that their products were still expensive where other brands were able to reduce prices using synthetic materials. And so you'd expect their operating profit or their net profit at the end would be significantly reduced because of that, because they're trying to compete with products who are able to use all these other materials. And so it's interesting because that'll come full circle when we talk about their financial performance these days. So the final one is the Birkin bag. So in 1984, Again, there's a little story. So again, I found it on the website as well, and so a few sources state it. So I think it's real. Basically, there's an actress named Jane Birkin back in the day, right? And she was known as an actress and also a singer. And she would notoriously carry a wicker basket around. I think the reason being that she could never really find a handbag that was big enough to accommodate everything she wanted to carry. I mean, you see some of the handbags these days are absolutely huge, and so you can see a need for it. And so the story goes that Jean Dumas at this point, who's Robert Dumas's son, he's running the company at this point, and he's on a flight from Paris to London. And she gets on the flight, and she takes her basket and she tries to put it in the overhead locker, and the lid comes off and all the stuff falls out. And he gets up and he, let's just assume that maybe he helps her put all the stuff back in. And then he introduces himself as the manager or the director of Hermès. And they sit down for the rest of the flight and they design what would be the ideal bag for her. And so out of that, initially the bag wasn't that popular, but quickly enough it became another symbol of sort of like exclusivity. Once enough celebrities started to use it, it had a high price. It had a high. The waiting list was extensive. There's kind of like there's a funny scene, and I think it's Sex and the City. You know, the TV show.
Yeah.
Is it a TV show or movie? No, it's both.
With Sarah Jessica
there's like
Parker.
a scene. Yes, there's a scene in that where like they go to buy one of the characters. I don't know a lot about the TV show, but one of the characters goes into the store to buy the handbag, and the lady goes, "Oh, you know they're extremely expensive." And the lady goes, "Yes, of course, that's what I want." And then she goes, "You know, there's a massive waiting list." And she says, "Yes, I wouldn't have it any other way." And so it's like implied, like they almost want that because it's like that.
Yeah.
It denotes exclusivity, you know. And so they purposely distribute the bags on irregular schedules and kind of like artificially create scarcity around the bags because they could just produce them mass, scale, but they don't want to do that. And so there's three particular bags that are like the rarest in the world. Do you have any idea how much they would be? Like when you think of like a handbag, what do you think like an expensive handbag would be nowadays? You've got a great job, but these are real people buying them nowadays. Like I'm not talking about people who are just celebrities now. Real people buy these handbags. They just save up and they buy them. How much do you think like some of these handbags might go for?
I mean, I would say in some of these luxury brands, I would say like, I don't know, $4,500 or something. And I would say like the top end of the absolute extreme might be like 45 or something.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I looked at the top three variants of this particular Birkin bag. So they obviously make it in different materials, different colors, stuff like that, right? And so some of them are more rare than others. And so the most rare in existence is the diamond sack Birkin. And there's only three in existence. I don't know who owns them, but maybe probably someone pretty rich. And they're crafted in rose gold and they're inlaid with more than 2,500 diamonds, right? And it's actually miniaturized, and you wear it like as a bracelet.
Yeah, okay.
And the recommended retail on all three of them was more than $2 million USD for that particular product. The most expensive actual Birkin bag was a Himalaya bag. And it was constructed out of, crocodile skin, and they painted it white, or they dyed it white and grey to kind of look like the Himalayan mountains. So this is an actual product at this point. The recommended retail on that one was $300,000 USD.
Yeah.
And there was a secondary sale in 2022 last year at Sotheby's auction house. And it went for, I think it was 440,000 USD. So that was an increase. It's pretty interesting.
It's only going up.
Yeah, which is interesting. And then another one is the diamond Birkin, which is again a crocodile skin with a bunch of diamonds encrusted into the white gold hardware. And so that one recommended retail was up to 250,000 USD. So you can pay massive dollars for these handbags. I think, just to put it back in perspective, I think you were sort of about right. Like, I think recommended retail on an average one, you're talking more like $10,000 to $12,000.
Yeah, still pretty crazy though.
But yeah, it's a lot of money for something that you could easily get stolen, or you could easily leave somewhere, or whatever it is.
Exactly, yeah.
So competitors, there's really not that many. There's only 5, which is, I think, interesting. So Chanel is the only company that's private. It's one of these large conglomerates. and so you can't buy it. They're known for things like the Little Black Dress and Chanel Number 5 perfume.
Number 5, yeah, that's what I was guessing.
And yeah, so they're kind of pretty well known. The first company that is public that you could purchase is called Kering, which is actually a 2004 merger between Gucci and a company called PPR, which now brings Gucci, Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, all under the one conglomerate.
Yeah.
The company PPR, that stands for the initials of a pretty wealthy family in Europe, and so they are the largest shareholder in Kering, although it is publicly listed if you would like to purchase some shares. LVMH, as you mentioned, was a merger between Louis Vuitton and Moët Hennessy in 1987. Market cap, I think it's $300 billion USD when I was looking at it earlier. A lot of brands in this one. So Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, Fendi, Sephora, which is a big one. I think I see that a lot these days in shopping centers and stuff. Moët Chandon and Hennessy itself.
Yeah. What I was going to say is Bernard Arnault,
yes,
the guy there. So he keeps coming up the lists on the billionaires as the richest person in the world.
Really?
And dropping back. So he'll often overtake Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk when Amazon and Tesla are having a bad week, because his shares, obviously, they stay a lot more fixed. They're more retail sales, less tech speculative. And so he'll often kind of stay in the same place at, 250 billion or whatever it is. Like he'll have some personal net worth, which is like most of the value of LVMH. And then Elon and Jeff and a few other people sometimes kind of overtake him. And then, but in the last year, I think he has been technically the richest person
at one
in the
point.
world on paper. Yeah. So I think he's been a few times.
Okay, that's interesting. I suppose it says something for investment in that company then, as some sort of hedge potentially on your more speculative tech stocks potentially. Don't know. Another one. So there's two others. One of them is Richmond. And it has two brands. It's quite new. It was founded in 1988, which is pretty crazy when we're talking about these other brands from the 1800s. But the brands are Cartier and Mont Blanc. And so I've definitely heard of Cartier. And again, largest shareholder is the Rupert family, which are the original founders. But it is public. You can purchase that one on the stock exchange. And L'Oreal. It was founded in 1909, and the only really notable brand I could find within their portfolio, although there are a few, is Giorgio Armani. And so that's a public company. Again, the family owns majority shareholder in that company. So the thing that's interesting about Hermès, and the reason that I wanted to talk about them, is their current net profit margin and an interesting collaboration they've done with a guy named Manny.
Okay.
So in regards to financial performance, and people might be most interested in this, so talking about 2021, because that's where I could find all information for every company. It's interesting to see that the largest, as you say, is LVMH, by far, almost double their competitor, so their nearest competitor. So LVMH is somewhere in the $65 billion revenue range annually, and L'Oreal, which is actually the next largest, is 38. And so a significant increase there. Kering, which was the company that owned quite a number of well-known, your Gucci, your Balenciaga, Saint Laurent, for example, right? They 20 billion, so somewhere around half of L'Oreal in annual revenue, and then Hermès all the way down at just over 11 billion. So kind of smaller in regards to annual revenue, but the interesting thing is the net profit margin. So LVMH 20%, L'Oreal 14%, Kering 16%, Richemont 10%. Now Chanel 36%, but A, private company financials might not be totally correct. B, private company, you can't invest in it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Hermès, not necessarily private company, 30% net profit margin. So this is net profit margin here. This is not like operating profit, gross profit. Net profit margin. Pretty impressive. So they took home $3 billion from that 11, which is pretty cool, thereabouts. And so I think very interesting company in regards to profitability, and that's kind of interesting thinking back to the original time where they were really quite unprofitable because they were sticking to their guns and using natural materials where everything else was going synthetic. Whereas you'd say maybe now people are probably swinging back the other way and wanting natural materials to a certain extent. People don't necessarily love chopping up cows so much nowadays, though.
Yeah.
So handbags, I think it could be an interesting asset class. For example, in the 80s, you could buy a Kelly bag for 4,000. Now it's worth about 10,000 in the secondary market. Birkin bag, again, bottom of the range sort of thing. In the 80s, it was about 2,000 in today's dollars. Today, that same bag somewhere around 10,000. And so there's certainly general increase to be made there. There's probably, I was having a look online, right? I was like, okay, surely someone has done the thing where you all, go in together, you pull your money and you buy a handbag.
And fractionalize
handbag ownership. But I can't find anything anywhere. So that's potential industry ripe for disruption. You could, combine a little bit of Web3 technology there, maybe some sort of DAO, and go out and buy yourself a Birkin bag. Although the only issue is Birkin bags are very hard to actually purchase because buying them from the store, they won't necessarily just sell them to you. They'll tell you there's a waiting list, and if they don't like you, they'll tell you that there's a locked waiting list, and you may not ever be able to purchase one, which is a very interesting concept. So secondary,
very similar to Rolexes as well.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that I think makes this company quite interesting is a collaboration that they did. So they have a department which basically for particular customers will do anything. So you come to them with a project that relates to what they do. So it relates to use of leather product for the most part. And they will most likely be able to do it for a price. And so a guy named Manny Koshbin, who lives in California in LA. So I think he is in LA. He lives in Orange County, which is about 2 hours south of LA, and he's a property developer, fully self-made, and he did 3 collaborations with Hermès, and I think we should probably put the photos up. First one is a Bugatti Chiron, fully redid the whole interior. Second one is a McLaren Speedtail.
Oh, I've seen this. That's pretty. Yeah.
And the third one is a Pagani Hyra. And so, yeah, real estate investor guy, he approached them and got 3 collaborations with 3 different cars.
Yeah, I've seen this guy on YouTube. He's pretty funny. He shows off his collection and everything on his YouTube channel.
Yeah,
and
I think it is funny. So I never knew what he did, and then I tried to look him up a bit, and I found he had a bio on one of his websites somewhere, and so it listed him being a property developer XYZ, and a few sources noted his net worth at about 80 million. And I thought, well, I mean, 80 million is a lot of money, but 80 million is not that much money when you see how many cars he has.
Yeah.
He has probably $20 million worth of cars, maybe even more. And so I think the intention behind them is that they're actually appreciating assets. If you look at the types of cars he purchases, they're quite unique. And so I think that's his approach, because if they weren't, that would be a little bit scary, if they were really quite depreciating assets. But I think the idea is that he invests 20%, which is such a large portion of his net worth, right? A quarter of his net worth is invested into what is basically vehicle investment, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Sometimes online as well, there's some pretty inaccurate net worth estimates as well.
That's also very true. He might be worth significantly more. So yeah, Hermès, interesting company. As I said, you can buy them on the Paris Exchange. Great net profit margin. Some really interesting custom projects, and a really interesting story, and some interesting products. Would I ever buy one of their products? I think the answer is no. I think it's a slippery slope in my head. I think once you buy a product like that, I think you continue to feel the need to buy products like that. And so I don't think I would want to. I kind of like the idea of just buying simple things. But a lot of people love it, and so they don't need my business. And so, yeah, good company.
Yeah, absolutely. The founders of Instagram are back, and they have a new startup called Artifact. So this is this is really cool. It's like TikTok, but for news.
That's interesting.
So this would be pretty cool. So I've been using this for the last couple of days, and I actually really like it. It's if you've just been using Twitter as a source of news, and you don't like the negative comments, then this is a game changer. So let's start with a little context, right? So Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger both started Instagram in 2010. And so we all know what it is by now. It's been 13 years since it came out. So it's definitely one of the most popular social media apps, and it definitely was the most popular one at one point in time. And so
I wonder if
basically,
it still is.
yeah, well, I think TikTok is more in terms of monthly active users, because I think that's the standard comparison. But today, Instagram has 1.2 billion monthly active users, which is really interesting. And so I'm not sure if they're the top at the moment, or if they're second or third. But I think WhatsApp counts as a social media, and I think it has more than Instagram as well, or it's definitely had more at some
Yeah.
point, which is heaps interesting.
Yeah,
But
a lot of
it
these,
definitely,
I think both TikTok and WhatsApp, I think are both pretty like popular in some of these Asian countries, and so I think that helps. I think Instagram probably a little less so, and so I think that's probably their main downfall. But yeah, they're definitely massive.
exactly. But if we're talking 2017 to 2019, I would definitely say strong chance that it was the most popular social media. So if we go back in time a little bit, the first photo was posted by Mike Krieger, the co-founder, along with his other co-founders, Kevin. So the first photo was posted by Mike. I think it's of his dog, and that was on the 16th of July 2010. And so in February 2011, so just the next year, they raised a Series A of $7 million at a valuation of $20 million. And in April 2012, they raised 50 million at a valuation of 500 million. Now, here's something interesting. Also in April 2012, they agreed to sell to Facebook. And so Facebook agreed to buy the company for $1 billion. So the people that, so that was basically a $300 million in cash and $700 million in stock. And so that deal ended up closing in September 2012, just before Facebook went public. So essentially, the investors in April 2012 doubled their money. So I'm not sure exactly when they invested in April, but Facebook agreed to buy on the 9th of April, which means that the investors that invested in April 2012 doubled their money in less than 9 days. So any time between because they raised at that 500 million valuation,
500,
and then sold it, then sold for $1 billion in the same
That's crazy.
short period. But it was only the year before that it was valued at 20 million, so there would have been a few much luckier investors.
And that's where you see some of the richest tech guys around nowadays are probably those guys who are in the 20 million round.
Exactly. And it's really interesting. Jack Dorsey was actually one of the investors in that $20 million round. So he's the founder of Twitter. So obviously he thought that would be a big idea. Bit of competition, but maybe not. Maybe he didn't think like that at the time. And I mean, people use both, so it's not really. So both of the founders left Facebook in November 2018, which is heaps interesting because most founders actually leave Facebook once their company gets acquired, which is says something about the culture, I think. So I think there's a real disconnect there between maybe the large corporate Facebook versus the small startup that the founders have built. They're giving up a lot of control as well, probably giving up control to a middle manager at Facebook who is now their boss, when they were the CEO and they were, they thought of themselves on the same level as Mark Zuckerberg. Now there's 10 layers between them and Mark, so it's probably that. I can't say for sure, but the same thing happened when they bought Oculus. So the company that makes the VR headsets, the founders also left after their acquisition. I'm assuming there's also something in them that's like, we have to build a company. We're not building anything here. And there's potentially
you have to expect that those types of people would just want to move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
They've got all this
and
capital,
also
they're ready to go.
Yeah, 100%. And like, what's the point of working for someone as well if they already have all this money? They're not really working for their salary, especially once their stock vests, because there's a certain period where they can't actually get paid out all of their stock from selling their company, and so they're probably just waiting there for all their stock to vest, which is kind of funny. So back to Artifact. So it's marketed, or at least it's commented as like the TikTok but for news. So it starts out with this. It starts out with this page where you can click on what what you're interested in. So you can click on soccer, US politics, TV and movies, stuff like that. And then once you get through, you have this really clean display of articles in this For You page, which is really cool because it's sort of a bit like TikTok. So you click on one, and it takes you through to the publisher or newspaper's page, and within like Artifact's kind of interface, so you can kind of see. It's almost like you're using a web browser to click onto someone's page, almost like a Google home screen. But it's only the articles that you'll like. So it's really interesting. So you'll go in through there. There'll be no username and sign up process in Artifact. So like as I signed up, I just downloaded the app, selected my interests, and I was already in the page, right? And so then I was thinking, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't have to make an account. I didn't have to do any of this. And then it's really cool. You just start using it. And then it says like, I went to the profile section because it's making a profile on you based on your preferences and what you like and everything. So I went through there, and it says, if you want to save your preferences, you can enter your phone number, and it'll save you. And then you just have to enter it again next time. So yeah, the whole sign up process was phone number and verification code, which is funny because it wasn't like first name, last name, or email address or anything like that. So that was kind of cool. I really like the low touch aspect of it. Yeah, and so basically you get through. You can choose to include your subscriptions that you already have. So you can choose to include the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and stuff like that. But if you don't include those, it'll kind of automatically exclude all the articles that block with paywalls and everything. So on your For You
doesn't even
page,
show you them. That's cool.
yeah. So on your For You page, it won't, like if you click through to an article, you're not going to get a paywall or anything like that. So
that's good.
I reckon
that's a service in it. That's a service in itself. Exactly, because like already you're on Google and you just type stuff in, like, I don't know, you type up something you know has happened and you want to read an article on it, and so many of them, you click them, paywall, click it, paywall, click it, paywall. You're like, just give me one without a paywall. So that's actually so good in and of itself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so yeah, obviously if you have that subscription, then it'll add it, and obviously it won't have the paywall and everything. And you can kind of sign in through the app to your subscription. So it's pretty cool. So I actually got one of the news sections from it. That Spotify Web3 story. I saw that on Artifact because I selected crypto as an interest, which is really cool. So you may have been wondering why it's like TikTok for news. So the reason is algorithmic predictions. So there's a lot of hype around AI, and another word for algorithmic predictions is artificial intelligence based estimations, or guesses. You know, it's like using AI to estimate what your preferences are, which is really cool. So basically what this means is there's a system which is taking how much of an article you've read. It takes that, and it says it takes which articles you click on, and it conglomerates all of the categories and topics. You have a really cool stats page which shows you all of the topics that you like most and the publishers that you like most. And it's actually incredible idea, because it's like taking what YouTube and TikTok have done really well and been doing for years and applying it to the news that people read. Like, it's just such an obvious product. In hindsight, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this is actually a really good idea, obviously. Like, but yeah, it's obviously you don't think about it until someone else has done it already. So a few of the future features will be sharing with friends, seeing what they're reading, what they like, and telling the system whether you like an article or you don't like an article, or you don't like a publisher. You can kind of cut that out of your feed forever. The stats page is obviously really cool. So yeah, obviously it shows you what your kind of percentages of everything you've read are and all that. You can see where you're up to in certain articles. You can go back to your history and see, oh, it's 32% read. You can click on that. It'll take you to 32% of the way through the article, and you can keep going.
Oh, that's great.
And
That's
so yeah,
fantastic.
it is really cool. And so basically, it opened up to the public on the 23rd of Feb, which is 3 days ago from when we're recording here.
Yeah, right.
That's so it opened up with no waitlist or phone number. So before that, it had been open for all of Feb, I think, with a waitlist and a bit of exclusivity. So now it's opened up to the public. So it's sort of an official launch, sort of 3 days ago, which is really cool. It's really hard to see any data on the real funding of the business or anything like that. But I would actually, or like when they started working on it or anything like that, I'm assuming all the founding stories and all that stuff will kind of come out over the next couple of years as it becomes a bit of a success or a failure, but probably won't be a failure. Um, or you never know. I mean, but I would also assume that they've kind of funded it themselves and built the team themselves and all that kind of thing because of they would already be sitting on huge piles of cash. So like they can just own 100% of this second business, which is cool. And so there'd be something there. So I think both of the co-founders are 39. So they've been obviously founded Instagram 13 years ago.
Yes. They have done something fairly significant prior to this, but yeah, that's cool.
Very significant. Yes. Yeah. So
39.
that was my comment on age from before.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if they get another hit, that'd be really cool. There'll be dual startup hits.
Very
so cool. The main things, they had 3 factors that they wanted before they wanted to build a startup. And so this is before they built a new company. They wanted a big new wave in consumer technology, a new way to connect that wave to social technology, which they're still really wanting to build in that area because they're passionate about it, and an idea of how their product could solve a problem. So that's their 3 factors. And then once those 3 factors were met, that's when they would create the app. So this is their idea based on their three-pronged kind of philosophy, which is cool. So next up, I'm going to talk about a competitor, which I've found, which is also very recent. So this is cool. This is heaps interesting. There's a competitor called Ren, and it's actually really hard to find something about this company online. I think because there's already a cryptocurrency called Ren, and so it might be it's like a similar name. Yeah. So when you're trying to find that specific thing, you look up Ren News, and it'll come up with that crypto. So I mean, I think they should rebrand, but that's just me. Or they just have to get better and rank higher. But obviously hardly any competition. But no, it is a competitor. So part of their point of difference is that they're a little bit more like LinkedIn. So this is a bit of a niche. So they'll look at the news which is related to your network. So you import your LinkedIn or your contacts, and you get news about your clients or the people that you know in a shortened, summarized article, and it'll tell you which kind of what news they've been in. It'll use AI to shorten those articles and tell you about. So one of the use cases on their front page is about, this guy raised 1 million in a startup round, and he's your friend from your contact. So obviously, it's more for business leaders who are already in this high position because like most people don't have. I think it's like such a funny thing to build a startup around. Yeah, everyone has a friend in the news, and all of these people will be in their custom feed of news. So it's definitely very, very high end.
I'll link mine, and there'll just be nothing in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the whole idea is you have a big network, and then each time your network gets mentioned, you get a feed, and then you can press reach out, and it'll say, "Congrats on raising $1 million in this round from whoever."
Yeah, cool.
And it's like an automated
that's cool. That's great
system, so it kind of sends a message. So back to Artifact. Overall, I think it's really like a really cool idea. Can it get big? I think a lot of people use a lot of people read the news, and this helps to like make it better. It'll let you discuss with your friends in the future. So I think that's cool. I think without the mass disagreement of an argument of Twitter, maybe it won't be as viral as Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, just because of the lack of disagreement that people see, because that helps stuff go viral. But at the same time, making
Yes,
an
that's
app
right.
where there's no ability to have negativity, I think is really cool. So maybe not as viral, but definitely more useful and kind of it's a bit nicer than a social media, for example. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice change. I think there's. I don't think it could ever be as big as Instagram, because I just don't see, like, people want to take photos and put them up. Like, everybody wants to do that nowadays, and people have started to learn how to use it, and more and more generations who are becoming tech savvy are able to do that. Like news, like I just think there's a certain type of person who just doesn't care about the news.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I don't think you. And so, yeah, I think you're just very much targeting a more specific audience. But I think it's a huge audience still, and I think it could still be absolutely very successful. I just I don't think it would ever overshadow what they've done with Instagram. But yeah, it's actually cool. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to read some articles.
Yeah, it's really cool. I recommend it, and I'm keen to see where it goes from here. So yeah,
love it. Nice.
All right, so in this episode, we brought back Web3 music. We learned how to make the most of AI. We learned about Hermès and some of the very expensive handbags you can get from there, which is cool. And a social media app that is back. Well, the founders that are back anyway. So yeah, pretty
The founders
cool.
are back. Love it.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Till next time, indeed.